The white store manager slapped the black woman's face and raised her hand aggressively, saying, "You don't belong. Security at the thrift store should take this woman out right away." This isn't a charity case. The whole store had ceased operations, and all eyes were focused on the woman being screamed at in this terrible altercation. Diana Williams endured the public disgrace with remarkable poise. She washed her face quietly without yelling or even showing signs of astonishment. Using the back of her palm, she touched Brittany's face and did something that made her shiver. She grinned painlessly, smile that showed she knew. Not one of surprise, but one of knowledge, perhaps amusement. Something Brittany didn't do. But then an unexpected event occurred when the woman who was if you think everyone should be treated with respect, then slapping showed who she truly was. Hit the subscribe button with respect, regardless of their skin tone, and let us know where you're viewing from in the comments to comprehend how we arrived at this combustible time.
Ow.
We must return Diana. Williams entered the doors for the first time 8 hours prior. Williams, a 52-year-old black lady, is poised, attractive, and wealthy precisely to $0.8 billion. From nothing at all, she had created an empire in retail, with 847 outlets throughout Thekatry, but Diana's decision to wear modestly tailored jeans set her apart from the majority of millionaires, basic sweatshirts, old sneakers, and a Honda that was 10 years old. Why? Because she never wished to forget her origins. Diana's early years were filled with experiences similar to what you just described, instances where shop management and staff made her feel excluded based just on the way Diana had vowed that if her mother had ever been humiliated in a store like this one, it would be this one. The ability to alter events, which she would do if she ever had it. And let's speak about Brittany Anderson, who was going to have to learn it the hard way. The manager of this upscale premium collection business is a 42-year-old blonde. For the previous 12 years, however, no one realized that Brittany was profoundly growing up in a poor household and working her way up from sales. She was uneasy about her own middle-class upbringing, associate, and has since overcompensated by treating everyone she thought was beneath the store's reputation with extreme brutality. Brittany's whole management approach was based on the principle that the store's reputation should always be protected, and that for her. That meant excluding anyone who didn't appear to belong, but Brittany wasn't working alone. She had developed a group of workers who admired her management style. The 28-year-old single Mother Maria Gonzalez was in dire need of Brittany's permissions to continue working. At the time, Maria's job was crucial to her family's existence because she had a little boy at home. There was 35-year-old Tyler Brooks, who had worked at the business for 8 years. He had been promoted 3 times under Brittany, and he sincerely thought she was preserving the store's integrity, leadership, and considered her a mentor. Amber Davis was just 24 years old. Brittany Amber, young cashier who adored her, believed that Brittany was teaching her about actual business and how to deal with challenging circumstances. Helen Carter, 67, wasn't even a worker. She had become Brittany's biggest fan and an affluent white frequent customer. In exchange for Helen spending hundreds of dollars a month at this store, Brittany treated her like princess. Finally, there was Carlos Rivera, 31. Helen considered herself a guardian of the store's legitimate customers. Carlos, the security officer who blindly followed Brittany's instructions, had total faith in her judgment when it came to spotting troublesome clients. Brittany's army was her devoted supporters who thought she couldn't do anything wrong, but they were unaware that they were about to take part in the humiliation of the one individual who may ruin their whole career with a one phone called Diana Williams. Had entered her own business 8 hours prior for what she believed to be a typical surprise. Lately, she had been getting anonymous correspondence regarding Shop for 7, as the owner of 847 businesses. I have received complaints regarding discrimination, bad customer service, and a hostile work climate. Diana was unaware that she was going to be the target herself, but she took these allegations extremely seriously. Diana, nevertheless, was silently studying the pricey handbag exhibit. She was mentally recording the store's activities, While observing how staff members engaged with clients and examining the keeping a low profile was part of her regular inspection practice for goods. Presentation blend in and see how things actually transpired when management believed that no one of significance was looking. But Brittany Anderson had alternative plans. But when Brittany saw Diana across the store, she made the decision right then. This woman didn't belong. We had to figure out why here. Brittany noticed the old sneakers, the basic sweater, the faded trousers, and her biases went into overdrive. And Brittany marched over with that, knowing nothing about Diana other than her attire. "Well, honey, have you lost the goodwill?" That false customer service grin that shouted difficulty about 15 minutes. And then all of a sudden, no greeting, no "Can I help you?" Locate the tone was one of utter arrogance disguised as kindness. It was almost comical to be so condescending. But this was real life, and it was occurring to a real lady named Diana. She calmly said, "No, I'm exactly where I need to be." Now, a typical person would have went on after receiving this response, maybe providing genuine help. But Brittany was typical. Rather, she had centered her whole personality on sarcasm, now permeated her speech as she excluded those she considered undeserving. "I don't think you understand the type of business this is, honey. By the way, they aren't exactly yard sale pricing." She made it clear that her words were like verbal poison, speaking to an adult lady like Brittany. Okay. Did something that demonstrated to you that she was a bewildered youngster who had strayed into the wrong area. She began performing to an audience led by Helen Carter, who knew exactly who she was. A rich regular client, age 67, was in the area looking at a silk scarf that Helen had spent hundreds of dollars a month buying at this business for years. And Brittany had developed her into an ally. Helen began laughing appreciatively at Brittany's performance after hearing this discussion. This was all the Helen's encouragement gave. Brittany, the confidence she needed, grew louder to ensure that other patrons could know that we provide a highly special customers here who have real money to spend on Diana are unwilling to be. She approached to look at the jewelry display case, feeling quite apprehensive, interested in observing the merchandise's quality, presentation, and upkeep. These were her products. She wanted to see how they were displayed in her business, but Brittany saw this as a chance to escalator assault. She trailed Diana to the jewelry counter, whereupon she truly let free, "Sweetheart, that bracelet is more expensive than most people's. Renting for 6 months? Oh. Are you certain you wouldn't like Target's costume jewelry section?" Brittany laughed sarcastically. It was clear from the tone of her voice that she wasn't in an attempt to make Diana feel as inferior and unworthy as possible. She was purposefully nasty in addition to being impolite. And this is when things became extremely nasty. As other customers began to congregate and observe, word was getting around the shop that there was a fight going on at the jewelry store. Meanwhile, people were giving up their shopping to watch this, as it was entertaining them. As the crowd grew, Brittany made the decision to come see this show. She turned to speak to the audience in order to truly put on a performance, since some people just don't recognize their role in the world. Are they a middle-aged guy or a random customer in a pricey suit? Truly chuckled and concurred, saying, "She's got a point." The audience was supporting this conduct, the woman said, nodding and whispering to her buddy. They felt superior, as they were having fun seeing this woman get humiliated. They belonged to an exclusive group that Diana wasn't deserving of. Joining, according to Brittany, was consuming this energy like a vampire. She kept raising the volume and theatricality of her voice, saying, "Ma'am, I'm attempting to spare you the humiliation of being turned down when you are unable to pay. For our payment options, the 35-year-old worker, Tyler Brooks, who had been there for 8 years, positioned himself close by. Although he hasn't said anything yet, but it was obvious from his body language that he supported Brittany. He believed that she was defending the store's reputation. The 28-year-old single mother, Maria Gonzalez's entire mindset washer. Hands were trembling a little as she watched from behind the cashier counter, and she knew her son relied on her. So even though this was wrong, she couldn't afford to lose her work income. And Brittany had stated that loyalty was crucial at this store. But Diana's actions sent Brittany went into overdrive, as she went to the clothing department and inquiretto try on an expensive designer outfit that was hanging, not just any item. Brittany's eyes glowed in the VIP area as if she had just received the attention everyone. This woman wants to test on our $4,000 designer's ideal weapon attire. Everyone in the store fell quiet, including customers, staff, and even the security guard halted their activity and gazed at Diana Brittany, who had just made this a public spectacle. She really enjoyed every moment of it as the quiet dragged on. Diana stood there with amazing elegance for what seemed like an eternity while hundreds of people stared at her. Brittany broke the stillness with a dramatic flourish, as if she were a zoo display. Should I tell her RA credit check is required by the fitting room regulation? At first, the throng began to whisper. Some of them others spoke to one another. Giggling uncomfortably, Amber Davis, the 24-year-old cashier, who admired in fact, Brittany burst out laughing and remarked, "Miss Anderson is so funny," provided Brittany even more self-assurance since she was now entertaining the audience like a roast comedian. Diana was scrutinized excessively and gave this heartbreaking comment. "Honey, that garment costs more than if you have a car and didn't take the bus here. Your automobile is worth it." The brutality was amazing. In front of several witnesses, a human being was methodically attempting to undermine the dignity of another individual, and everyone was following along. Some were smiling, some were nodding in agreement, and some were uneasy, but remained silent, encouraged by the audience's response. Helen Carter chose to really participate in the performance. "There are many beautiful boutiques that would be more affordable for you." Sweetheart. Diana, with extraordinary fortitude, requested to talk to the manager. She was handing one last chance for Brittany to defuse this situation. One last chance to demonstrate some fundamental human decency, but Brittany instead threw her arms wide. "Congratulations, you're looking at her, and I'm telling you that," she said, seeming to be enjoying the limelight. "You're dressed inappropriately and the wrong place at the wrong time." Now that word had gone around the store, that something major was occurring with phones. The throng was growing, were pouring out, and people began to videotape this humiliation for their social media accounts. It was going to become widely known for all the wrong reasons. Brittany was enjoying herself so much that she knew the public was ogling her. "I assume you thought you would come pretend to shop after seeing this establishment on Instagram? But it's not time to dress up." Miss Anderson manages these situations flawlessly, and the staff was supporting her until Tyler Brooks eventually spoke out fully. Even the security guard, Carlos Rivera, was giving a sign of approval from the other side of the shop. And Brittany then said what may have been the cruelest thing she had ever spoken. She made motions across the store, as if she were presenting evidence in court. "Take a look about you, honey, and see our actual customers can breathe here since they belong here and detect anything unusual. The same air as our product," which was really embarrassing, by stating that Diana didn't deserve to breathe the same air. Brittany was committing dehumanization, like the goods in this shop, considering her as though she were a potential source of infection. That math crowd was totally on Brittany's side, just by being close to them. They were suddenly nodding and whispering agreement, with some even cheering Diana. But there were a lot of angry expressions all around her. They were all in agreement that she didn't belong. They hadn't yet reached their lowest point. No, Brittany had one more. Embarrassment at the shop. When she had Diana open her purse for examination, she smirked and continued. "When someone obviously doesn't belong, we checked for sticky," claiming it was shop policy fingers. She implied that Diana had stolen, but she wasn't saying it outright. The audience gasped at this development, which made it obvious that she was implying that Diana was the kind of person who stole stuff, had changed from derision to direct accusation. And Diana cooperated while retaining her composure under unthinkable pressure. Brittany made a huge show of it by digging through Diana's personal items in response to the request. In front of this group, as though she were a detective, "Cracking a serious case," Brittany said. "Let's see what we have here," as she dug through the bag. Keys, tissues, and what's this? She then discovered that Diana's pocketbook was worn and taped together since. Diana had owned this wallet for years and didn't see the need to change it because it was still functioning well for Diana. For Brittany, it was the ideal weapon, symbolizing pragmatism, and maintaining her sense of reality. She held it up like a piece of evidence. Take a look at this. Everyone is taped together. This is what it looks like to try to shop above your station. The audience burst out laughing, and some were snapping photographs while others were pointing and muttering. Helen Carter fueled the probably saved for months, only to window shop another. The poor the customer commented that she most likely utilizes coupons at McDonald's because of this embarrassment. Was the full-fledged workplace of Diana Williams, a rich businesswoman. Recently, more than 50,000 people were publicly ridiculed, dehumanized, and degraded by her own employee at her own business. What would you do if you were Diana? If you're enjoying the narrative that Brittany gave her, please let us know in the comments and click the subscribe button. I'm going to do you a favor, ma'am, with the assurance of someone who thought she had won everything. Additionally, to spare you any humiliation. There's a charming small bargain shop down the block where you may potentially look for anything inside your budget. The throng said. Approval, Rhea told Amber in a whisper, that she is very skilled at preserving our reputation. Even some workers from several departments had assembled to see, and they were all nodding in agreement, certain that Brittany had just well dealt with. A difficult client, but none of them were aware of this, was the information Diana had been secretly recording that was going to alter everything. Every slur, every harsh chuckle, and every second of the conversation on her phone had high-definition footage and crystal clear audio of this relentless dehumanization. Brittany's patronizing remarks about goodwill caused her to be humiliated at the jewelry counter and get the announcement. She received the wallet shaming from the entire store and the crowd's involvement in every moment of her degrading behavior. And Diana Williams' $3 billion company wasn't created by giving up to bullies. Rather, it was created by being more intelligent. And the folks at this store believed they were more patient and strategic than everybody else in the room. Having just experienced a triumph, believing they had seen a management effectively safeguard their valuable and unwanted intruders' shopping experience, and what they truly seen marked the start of the end for all those involved in this brutality. They were simply unaware of it. However, a sale at the 5th Street secondhand store has drawn attention to another. I believe a secondhand store could be more her style. Client. Has anyone brought up the discount rack? What about garage sales? Those are definitely more affordable for her. Every proposal that was made at Target is more demeaning than the one before it. These individuals were genuinely enjoying making fun of another person in public as they were treating this is similar to entertainment, such as a perverse game show where the winner makes someone feel unworthy. What was most disturbing was that they were adults, not children or those who were ignorant. These were wealthy, well-educated, and well-regarded individuals. These individuals most likely attended charity galas and spoke about assisting the underprivileged, yet though they had the chance to demonstrate fundamental human decency, but instead they chose cruelty, and Brittany Wassiam, in love with this. She was clapping her hands and laughing as if she were throwing a party. Our customers are Saban official. They can spot excellence when they see it and when they don't. The audience bursts into cheers and laughs. Each of them was attempting to outdo the previous idea while profiting off the nastiness of the others. It was like a competition to determine who could be the most contemptuous, disdainful, and a nasty old man in a fancy suit said, "Perhaps the dollar shop has the way," he said. Oliver's store sounded like he was saying sewage treatment plant. "A lady, I heard the Salvation Army is lovely this time of year," she said, wearing high shoes. And she delivered this phrase with falkskinness, as though she was truly attempting to assist. But in reality, she was acting as rudely as she could toward a younger guy. With a cashmere coat yelled out, and since internet buying is so common, I'm sure she could look for some amazing bargains on discount websites. Don't overlook outlet shops, suggested a different voice. The throng was packed and they had all the designer names at rates she could afford. Now that they were in feeding frenzy mode, they weren't only offering ideas. They were expanding on them and describing why each the Dollar General offers a whole apparel line that would be ideal for someone at Diana's rank. Section. Now clarified that one consumer was really inexpensive and enthusiastic, and Walmart is having everything she could possibly need in one location made it much more handy for others. Helen Carter, a rich regular customer, stepped forward on a restricted budget. I've heard that the charity in this region receives some amazing donations, so she may be giving expert evidence. Discover anything nearly stylish. These people's arrogance was so thick that a knife could cut it. Discussing Diana as if she were an abstract idea that didn't exist, instead of a human person directly in front of them. Tyler Brooks was given more confidence by the audience energy, as well as those bargain shops where everything is under $20, is ideal for someone who's keeping a close eye on every penny. Maria Gonzalez. Despite her seeming amber-knotted in discomfort, since she couldn't afford to lose her work, Davis was virtually jumping with joy as he shouted to other staff members about how amazing this was, the entire circumstance. And during all of this, every insult and vicious remark Diana Williams was incredibly dignified despite every insulting statement. She didn't defend herself. She didn't cry. She didn't show her identity. Simply remained there with an almost inhuman level of serenity, absorbing this unspeakable violence. However, if you looked closely, you could see something in her eyes that none of these people could identify. It wasn't defeat. It wasn't guilt. Rather, it was calculation. She was mentally recording everything, recalling every voice and face. A person who decided to take part in this mob assault because, without a doubt, wasn't just Brittany anymore. There were others in the entire shop who believed that degrading another person was okay, being deemed appropriate amusement. This group of people had decided to forego fundamental. The recommendations persisted in favoring ruthless mob mentality above human compassion. Streaming in, what about those warehouse retailers that require bulk purchases? I believe there is a consignment store that focuses on more functional apparel. Has anyone brought up the weekly yard sales that go place? There are several beautiful bargain stores that serve customers on a tight budget. Every recommendation was given in the same phony helpfulness and patronizing manner that made it obvious. Instead of attempting to assist, they sought to degrade Brittany, who was leading this horrible orchestra, like a pro. She nodded while offering her own insightful opinion. Recommendations. You can understand why we cater to the city's top clients, recognize excellence, and they comprehend the concept of appropriateness, hung like a weapon in the air. She was basically stating that Diana's presence was unsuitable, and that her being here was somehow disrespectful to good people. But Brittany wasn't done. No, she was still creating to something greater. You could tell that she was getting ready for her big show, her peaceful opposition to cruelty, according to her. She had a unique strategy that would culminate her performance in a manner that those in attendance would remember. She gestured for silence, as if she were about to address the audience, instantly fell silent, anticipating her next words, and they warefully engrossed in this display of dominance and exclusion. Waiting on her every word, the quiet lasted for Brittany took a minute to enjoy the adoration. Looking around the audience and making eye contact with her fans, escalating the dramatic tension, this was her time, and she intended to make the most of it. Let me paint you a picture. Brittany may have launched the most devastating verbal onslaught you've ever heard. Hey, allow me to assist you in comprehending the truth of your current situation. Requesting her voice had become condescending, like a teacher explaining something to a very slow pupil, was so thick that it was practically visible, and you longed to try the lovely garment that was hanging there. That's what some individuals pay for their entire property, not just their mortgage payment for the month. For several months, the audience was utterly engrossed in Brittany's words, nodding along, portraying Diana as being so inferior to them that it was ridiculous for her to purchase there. That purse you were eyeing, the one you considered checking out, is a vehicle payment. It was a permit, the amount that's successful. Individuals spend on transportation in a single month is equivalent to the payment on a luxury automobile. Brittany pointed to the showcase of those exquisite shoes in the display case Perry looked at, which is enough groceries for a family of 4 for a month. She took a moment to consider how much working folks spend on food for 30 days. Dramatic effect. allowing the audience to absorb these parallels while enthusiastically nodding some general consensus. This store is for humans, not penny dash counters. We serve clients who see a $4,000 garment and don't need to count it all. Believe that's adorable. But that's not feasible because we serve customers who purchase jewelry on impulsive. Buyers that shop for amusement rather than necessities and buy handbags because they fit their mood. The audience was totally involved now, and they felt superior and validated. They were nodding along as if Brittany were delivering. Reaffirming their position in some made-up hierarchy, Brittany kept raising her voice, speaking about deep truths rather than demeaning remarks to dramatic heights. Have a peek at our customers and take a close look at the expensive automobiles in our parking lot, include Mercedes. Teslas and BMWs cost more than the average person's yearly wage. Take a peek at the timepieces that our clients wear when they go. Shopping costs more than jewelry that might finance a small company or college tuition. She opened her arms wide as if she were testifying in court. Take a peek at how our actual clients dress, because quality is their default. But also because they want to create everything from head to toe. Setting, rather than their goal, the cheers began to reappear. Although it's a new world, honey, where money isn't everything. Brittany held up her hand to continue, but she wasn't done yet. In a society where the issue isn't, can I afford this, but do I want this? It's only a tool. A universe in which shopping is about enjoyment and taste, not financial constraints and limits. The audience was utterly mesmerized by her and was now nodding in agreement with what she was saying. They thought she was expressing. Exactly, and she's absolutely right. Something significant about their status and way of life. But Brittany had the most money saved. Terrible blow since you entered here believing you could act like someone you're not, yet we see through it. The ragged clothing that has been repaired several times, the taped-up wallet that ought to have been replaced years ago, and you touch objects in a way that has never been seen before. Quality earlier. As if you were going to a museum rather than a supermarket, the audience was totally engrossed in this character assassination. And the savagery was intensifying too. A crescendo. Everyone here understands that they belong in this environment. It's not about being cruel or exclusive. Rather, it's about truth, about realizing that different people function at various levels, and those levels don't overlap. She made one more motion around the store, saying, "This is our area. This is where we come to take pleasure in the rewards of our accomplishments, surround ourselves with lovely and high-quality items, shop with you and our peers." The wickedness was so comprehensive and utter that you just aren't one of us, because it was nearly impossible to believe that Brittany had just methodically destroyed all of Diana's dignity. She had reduced a human being to nothing more than her beauty and financial standing in front of dozens of onlookers. In essence, she had deemed Diana less than human and deserving of neither fundamental respect nor contemplation. And then the incident that would haunt the store's employees for the rest of their lives arrived. The audience erupted in deafening applause rather than merely courteous clapping, prolonged cheers, with some even whistling as if Brittany had just given the performance of a lifetime, extending a standing ovation to her, saying, "Wow," shouted one customer perfectly said. Eventually heard someone say it as if a third voice had been added. People were truly affected by Brittany's statement, as seen by the endless applause. They felt as though she had defended their way of life. After she had just spoken some deep truths about life and society, Brittany took a real bow to safeguard their special world from defilement. She curtsied as though she were enjoying the audience's admiration while performing on stage at the conclusion of a Broadway production. Thank you," she said, totally intoxicated by the power she was exerting, said while continuing to bow. "It's all about upholding standards and preserving what makes this place unique." People were chanting "Bravo" and "Well said" as the clapping continued. Indeed, a client began with a leisurely clap, which led to another wave of raucous applause. Helen Carter felt as though she had seen something monumental. She was nearly radiating with joy. Brittany had just given Tyler Brooks a master lesson on appropriate social limits. was excitedly cheering, certain that he had just witnessed Maria Gonzalez's flawless management in action. Amber Davis was applauding while clapping along, despite the fact that her heart was obviously not in it. Even patrons who hadn't been directly engaged in the altercation joined her. As if she were at a rock concert, the cheers that the whole store gave in honor of this moment of exclusion and cruelty when Brittany's palm quickly touched her cheek. Diane attempted to speak. The slap was so abrupt and startling that it sounded like a gunshot in a piercing crack that reverberated throughout the squeaky shop. So unprofessional that the business appeared to freeze for a brief while. Stunned stillness eventually descended upon the store. Not the hush of those attempting Topstraw, but the complete quiet of individuals who were seeing something so ridiculous that their minds need Brittany remained there, her hands still, taking a minute to comprehend what they had just witnessed. Her cheeks flushed with the adrenaline of someone who had just killed their career. And she was breathing heavily, unaware that she had just replaced a customer with rudeness. She glanced straight at Diana, which she smiled in the most patronizing way possible, as if she were addressing a kid who had finally realized why they couldn't pass. What they want and security will now lead you out so that our Carlos Rivera moved forward, prepared to allow actual consumers to shop in peace. The audience dispersed to make a trail of humiliation toward the exit as Diana was forcefully removed off the property, while some held up. Others watched in anticipation of Diana's final humiliation as she was marched out like a felon. Others were muttering as they prepared to record this last moment of victory on their phones, too. One another regarding how well this circumstance had been managed. Some of them were already preparing to share with their pals the day they saw the ideal illustration of how to uphold norms. This was the time when a millionaire company, while her own customers were inside, the owner was going to be forcibly removed out of her own business by her own security guard. Several staff members clapped and shouted. The irony was so flawless that it's almost like a work of fiction, yet this was real life. And these individuals were real, had adopted a mob mentality that prioritized rejection over inclusion and harshness above personal convictions. But something was going to occur that none of these individuals anticipated, something that would convert their victory into the start of their darkest nightmare, since Diana Williams had been documenting every moment of acclaim, every insult, every harsh advice, and every second of this methodical she was about to make a phone. And dehumanization had been caught on high-definition video with crystal clear voice call that would permanently alter everyone's life in this shop after being Diana Williams, humiliated in front of dozens of people, did something unexpected rather than fleeing, and she moved quietly toward the store exit. Maybe out of embarrassment or tears, but this wasn't a loss. Rather, it was a tactic. Diana went outside into the chilly midday air. The contrast with the poisonous atmosphere within the Shea could still hear the celebration taking on inside the business through the silent parking lot. She could still see Brittany enjoying her moment of victory through the enormous windows, speaking to the audience as though she had just rescued them all from a horrible danger. Diana calmly and controlledly took out her phone and called a number. This woman, who had established a $3 billion empire, was entirely professional, was going to demonstrate to everyone how that had occurred. James, this is Diana. For 8 years, James Parker served as Diana's assistant, handling everything from hostile takeovers to negotiations for foreign expansion. But he had never heard Diana's voice sounding like this way before. I need quick. Legaland, this is a code red issue, according to security at Shop 47. Meanwhile, Brittany was still celebrating her win inside the store. She saw Diana making a phone conversation outside as she got closer to the windows, which only made her more with such assurance. Brittany began yelling through the glass window, "Don't come back. Tell your friends this isn't the place for individuals like you." The folks inside clapped and laughed, saw this to be amusing, and believed Brittany was putting the finishing touch on this unexpected interruption. Yet Diana kept talking to James without once raising her voice. "James, I'm furious. Please bring the Shop 47 ownership paperwork. Additionally, bring all of the surveillance footage from today. And James bring there was a pause for the whole legal team as James posed a question they couldn't know. James, this is about something much more significant than a lawsuit. Is about letting others see who we truly are. Brittany returned to the store. She was completely radiant with mental delight as she addressed her admiring audience. After completing her career problem-solving performance, she told everyone who was interested that the audience cheered as we celebrated. Upholding our standards with champagne, Helen Carter began clapping once more. And a number of patrons were so thrilled about the champagne that they felt as though they had just taken part in a significant activity that had protected their unique shopping encounter. Brittany approached Tyler Brooks, who was pulling out the fine champagne from the Dom Perignon back office today, called for a true celebration. Tyler gave a hearty nod and went to Maria Gonzalez was behind the counter putting up glasses. But she continued to seek for the champagne. Amber Davis was almost bouncing with excitement despite feeling uneasy about everything that had just transpired, declaring to everyone who would listen how well Brittany handled the situation. Never witnessed anything like. Amber told a group of clients that Miss Anderson was really professional, flawless. She truly understands how to safeguard the name of our shop. The champagne was released and Brittany genuinely began toasting to upholding greatness, declaring as she raised her glass to safeguard what makes this location unique. The audience joined her in toasting, and they were all feeling as though they were a part of something significant and unique. Having protected their region and their living against an unwelcome intrusion, but Diana was outside completing a very distinct type of communication. James, how long before you arrive? Another pause. Excellent. And James ensures that the board of directors as a whole is aware of what transpired today. This will change. Diana hung up the phone and turned back to the store. Looking through the she could see Brittany smiling and pointing through the windows as the champagne party went on, reciting the tale to anybody who would listen. She was able to observe the clients who had took part in her humiliation and are now celebrating their win, but none of them realized that it had only taken them precisely 15 minutes. When their entire world was ready to fall apart, Diana chose to stand outside instead of going back inside. She was mentally noting everyone taking part in the celebration. While she watched and waited in the parking lot, every face of the individual who has opted for seclusion above love and harshness. Inclusion 3 black SUVs entered the parking lot at precisely 3:47 p.m. when necessary. Respectable business people would employ these automobiles, which weren't ostentatious or theatrical, manage important matters. The doors opened, and some of the greatest. Rachel Stone, the head of human resources for Prestige Collections, is one of the most influential individuals in the retail sector. Sarah Chen, Chief Operating Officer, David Kim, the Security Director, Michael Torres, the head of law, and the people behind they are a group of attorneys, detectives, and business leaders inside the store. Customers began to see that this was a complete corporate reaction team. It's not simply a business gathering. At first, rich consumers were intrigued by the cars but unconcerned, frequently showed up in fancy automobiles with entourages. But the group then began to make their way to the store's door, and their body language gave the impression that this wasn't a shopping expedition. Brittany anticipated them, which was her first belief that they must have been very significant clients. Perhaps they were present because word had spoke about how effectively she had managed the challenging circumstance before. Perhaps they wanted to give her a promotion as part of the team, or just to congratulate her. When Brittany went into the store, she smiled her broadest, most polished grin and said, "Perfect. I just handled a difficult situation beautifully," she stated confidently. "You probably saw that woman? She was totally unsuitable for our customers outdoors, but I handled this circumstance with total professionalism." Rachel Stone, a serious, 50-year-old lady having worked in corporate settings for 20 years. She could see the champagne glasses and the celebration as she scanned the store. "Miss Anderson, I presume," Rachel added, observing the smug looks on everyone's faces. "Yes. Brittany Anderson has been the store manager for 12 years. I've built an amazing team here," she said in a tone that was entirely business-oriented. "And we truly understand how to uphold our standards. I safeguarded our brand's reputation and our actual clients. Everyone here can attest to my professionalism." The legal team was already dispersing across the store without a word. Helen Carter was obviously taking notes and watching everything. She was still feeling confident from the earlier occurrences. Moving on with much anticipation. She was truly amazing and a true professional. Handled that terrible woman flawlessly. As we all witnessed, and other customers began to comment, Brittany was incredible. Truly understands how to preserve the store's image. So the woman had no right to be here, and Brittany spared us all from aerially awkward circumstance. The audience continued to cheer for Brittany. She believed that these business people were coming to offer her congratulations and maybe even some sort of acknowledgement or advancement. But Rachel Stone's face remained unchanged, weather anything, Miss Anderson. She appeared more solemn than when she had first entered. Need to talk? About how you handled a customer today. Brittany's confidence really peaked, straightened up with pride. Of course, I adhered to all the procedures exactly. It was textbook management that preserved our store's reputation, while safeguarding the shopping experience of our esteemed clients. As you can see from her gestures around the store, our customers are really happy, and we even opened champagne for them. Rachel Stone nodded gently, as if to congratulate upholding our high standards, absorbing all I see. And you're sure that the way you're handling this problem reflects the ideals of Brittany? Announced that I've been a part of Prestige Collections. I have been here for 12 years, and I am fully aware of the brilliance that this organization stands for, exclusivity and catering to those that value excellence. I safeguarded everything that the legal team completed their preliminary evaluation today, and that one of them went back to Rachel Stone's side. Rachel nodded and said, Miss Anderson, I'd like you to meet someone, at which point Diana, the shop, was so quiet you could hear a pin drop when Williams moved forward from behind the corporate team. Everyone who had taken part in the previous humiliation experienced a sharp shiver, even if they didn't know why. But Brittany gave Diana a perplexed expression, and a tinge of this woman obviously didn't belong here, as you can see by her displeasure. Rachel Stone's voice was totally out of place for our store's customer base. Yet I handled the situation flawlessly. Miss Anderson met Diana. Williams, while maintaining her composure and professionalism, Brittany waved her hand dismissively, saying, Yes, I am aware of the person who attempted toy, gave her a thorough explanation of why the store above her rank wasn't appropriate for someone from her background. The entire store watched this discussion, still not comprehending, and there was a pause that seemed to go on forever. What was going on? But beginning to sense that something was seriously off, Rachel Stone would ruin everything. The Prestige Collections founder, CEO, and owner boss. The ensuing quiet was so loud that it seemed as though someone had just let off a bomb in the middle of a business. But there was only complete astonishment rather than devastation. The confidence in Brittany's face started to fade and was replaced with bewilderment, followed by a sudden sense of fear when the words that's Diana Williams stumbled. It's impossible, but she looks like she dresses like. When she did speak, her tone was composed, controlled, and completely devastating. Like what, Brittany, someone who doesn't deserve basic human respect? If so, you had to click the subscribe button since the narrative was so amazing so far, and what came next was going told her your understanding of justice and consequences. The knowledge struck the gathering like one by one. The faces of the tsunamis transformed from assurance to perplexity to certainty, terror as they realized their actions. Helen Carter, who had been so certain only seconds before, began with her hand covering her mouth. She backed away. Oh my God, what have we done, Maria? Gonzalez, a single mother who had recently been attempting to maintain her employment, began to fear. I apologize. Miss Williams was only carrying out instructions. I had no idea why. Please, I need this job, Amber Davis. I didn't weep, but the young cashier who thought Brittany was so great did. She replied, You didn't belong. I'm so sorry. Tyler is aware that she told us you were, after cheering Brittany's performance. Brooks became absolutely white and began stuttering an apology. Customers who had taken part in the humiliation abruptly recognized that they had just made fun of and denigrated the proprietor of the shop where they were standing, began to quietly try to get out in the hopes that they might get away. Before Diana had been documenting everything, but no one paid attention to their involvement. The champagne glasses suddenly seemed very heavy in people's hands throughout the celebration, and she recalled every face. The mood changed to one of remorse and terror, and Brittany was in total disbelief that in only 30 seconds, her entire world had fallen apart. She had developed her identity by believing she understood everything, and being confident about it has recently been exposed as a disastrous error I didn't know. How was I supposed to know you dress like you look like but Diana? She murmured, didn't let her continue, because I appeared to be someone you determined wasn't worthy of receiving humane treatment. The corporate staff was documenting every response and justification. Rachel Stone came forward in an effort to downplay the events that had transpired. Miss Anderson, according to our observations and the information we've been given, you work for Prestige. As soon as security personnel went forward, collections were stopped, started taking off Brittany's security, credential, and name tag. She was prohibited from entering any Prestige collections facilities forever, but Diana wasn't done yet. She spoke for 8 hours to the entire store. You have all engaged in systematic humiliation for hours on end based only on looks and presumptions. Because of my appearance, you judged that I didn't belong here. You ridiculed me, denigrated me, and rejoiced in my humiliation, you said. I don't belong here. Yet your voice never lifted, and each syllable struck like a hammer. You're right. Britt and I don't belong anywhere that treats people this way, however. Since this is my shop, I will make sure that it embodies my principles. The repercussions for Maria Gonzalez and Amber Davis were fast and harsh, dismissed due to their involvement. In the discriminatory Tyler Brooks, demote Andad to finish obligatory bias training. And Helen Carter permanently barred a number of clients who had been barred from every elite collection store. And Diana declared a total makeover of the establishment. Culture and management. New policies, new training initiatives, and new leadership. But her final point was that respect is something that cannot be bought. It is something that cannot be won with money, with expensive clothing, and that one's sense of belonging isn't dictated by the bias of others. Today you all discovered that the most hazardous presumption you can make is that you can determine someone's value just by looking at them. Just minutes before, the business was celebrating cruelty and exclusion. Now, it was having to deal with the fallout of their decisions. And Diana Williams, whom they had attempted to degrade and alienate, was the occasionally. Justice didn't come from the one who would decide their fates. Sometimes it stemmed from the law or courts, because you never knew who you were speaking to people. And treating them with respect was not just the moral thing to do, but also the wise thing to do, because you could never be certain that the person you were disparaging was genuinely gazing down on you from a hate you never would have thought possible. If you liked this story, please subscribe and spread the word so that others may notice you in our network.